Okay, so we're live and we're here for the Atomic Anna discussion for the Arrrgh Book Club today. And I'm going to give people a minute to pop in. So if you're coming in, just say hi so we can see that you're here.
Yeah, it's super fun to see you pop up on the chat.
Yeah.
So whoever's here, let us know.
So who wants to go first? Do you want to start or should I start with our thoughts?
You
overall?
can start.
Okay. So I ended up really enjoying this. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I hadn't been sick while I was reading it, because that slowed the reading down a lot because I just could not process, and I had to keep rereading. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 4.25 stars, just over a 4. But it just hit a 5 for me.
I actually match you on if I. Hello again. I match you on the rating. I would give it a 4.25 if I was doing that. I had given it a 4.5 because I wasn't on the quarter scale. But I think that I like the second half of the book better than the first half of the book. Or I don't know.
The pacing is a little bit weird.
Yeah. I didn't I would say I don't know how, somewhere in between the second quarter and the first third, that was probably my least favorite part. Because I hadn't yet, I think, bonded to anybody, I didn't feel super into anyone. But by the end of the book, I was really in it,
yeah, definitely.
The last quarter especially.
I read probably the last 150-ish pages yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, we're doing this. We're just going to burn through the whole thing.
Me too.
It. So, but I don't know. I felt like that was probably my best reading experience, though, just plowing through the end of the book, because I don't know. I think once everything starts to wrap up and come together, I think the story just worked a lot better for me. But I did feel the story was a little bit slow in the beginning, but I was enjoying it. I liked the writing. And I really liked what she was trying to do with the idea of generational trauma and learning how to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So I liked that a lot.
I thought she hit a lot of topics in this book, way more than I thought.
Yes. I went into this not really knowing a lot about it. I knew it was time travel, and I knew it had to do with Chernobyl. I was expecting a lot more about Chernobyl.
I agree. And I was actually, when I started it, I was like, should I look up Chernobyl again? Figure out exactly what went down. And you did not need to do that at all for I think what she was trying to hit in this book. So it was interesting. Every once in a while, I would start describing things to my husband, because he's much more of a physicist type of person. He thought about going into theoretical physics and stuff in college. And then he made it not fun by knocking down some of the things that were going on in the comic book. And I was like, I'm not talking to you about this anymore. So, but I thought it was really well done. I mean, I thought she explored addiction, that generational trauma, the mom-daughter thing, the grandparent relationship, foster family dynamics, so many.
There was a lot going on in this book.
A lot.
Yeah. So. And I don't know, I liked how they handled the time travel, because I want, in my perfect story, I want time travel to be hard. I don't want it to be something easy to do. I don't want it to be something you could just pop around in time. So I liked that it was challenging, that it was hurting her to do it. So I don't know, I thought that was really well done. And I really liked all the conversation about you can go back in time, but should you? What damage could we cause? And what changes are going to happen because of that? And I thought they explored that really well too, with Raisa and Daniel. Well, if we do this, we're not going to know each other.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I thought that was really interesting.
I thought the idea of loss and like not caring about the things you should care about or people tell you to care about in any given time were interesting. Like that, you know, it wasn't like everyone was like invested in their child at all times or invested in like motherhood or invested in, like, people had different agendas. And I thought that was really realistically done. Like sometimes you're in a place where you are not like where people think you should be, you know, like according to the handbook of how it's done. And so when you have competing desires, you know, like it's really hard as a person, but especially as a young woman, I think, as you come into womanhood, like when things like this happen, like a loss of a parent, a loss of a child, a loss of a career, whatever this is, like trying to decide, like, if I choose this path, then truly, like, I am choosing not to do this other thing. You know, it was interesting. But then when you add in a time machine, it becomes complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I wrote down a bunch of things. What else did I write down? Yeah, the responsibility to family versus society. I wrote that down at some point. I really thought that was interesting because, again, I thought I was going to be getting like, we're saving everybody. We're going to erase Chernobyl from happening and save all these people. And like the whole conversation like shifts. Like, no, you need to save your family. Don't worry about this big thing. Worry about this small thing. And I thought that was a really interesting take because that's not one you see a lot, I don't think, in stories like this.
No. And with people actively pushing you in both directions.
Yes.
You know, like people who, even with Daniel, like his whole, like, you couldn't live with yourself. You couldn't, and he could probably live with her. And like all of this, like if she had chosen differently. I don't want to say too much because a whole bunch of people have not finished the book. So.
Yeah, I was nervous I wasn't going to finish the book. Yesterday was hard, but I got through it.
No. One of my kids had like catch-up projects for school, and I was like, "You and I both, kid. Let's get it done." So.
See. So do we want to talk about like favorite characters and that kind of a thing? Like, was there a character you felt more connected to?
Risa. I mean,
same. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely, like, once she entered the chat, I was like, okay, I'm invested now. It was hard for me to relate to Molly, partly because I felt like I don't know that the author gave her enough dimensions. Like, I felt like a lot of her character and a lot of her interactions with other people were negative to the point of like annoying. You know, like, surely there's some good scene here with you and your mom.
I agree with that. Yeah, I didn't connect with her, but I will say, listening to the audio, I liked her chapters the best because I love that narrator.
Yeah,
so that worked really well for me. So that helped keep me connected to her story, even though I wasn't really enjoying it as much as the others. But yeah, I did really like Raisa the best. I think I've always wanted to be good at math and science, but I'm not. So like whenever I read books about people who can do those, I'm like fascinated. Like, how does your brain work? Because like I don't understand math at all. So I find it fascinating reading from characters who are like math geniuses.
At one point in the story, she refers to math as a language. Like, I can't remember which character.
I tabbed that and I was like, wow, okay. I've never thought about math in that way.
Yeah. I had a whole discussion with my husband about it because I think that I was always very good at math, but I was always surrounded by people who were arguably better, just not as diligent as I was, you know, so my grades would be better. But I remember them teaching me math, like some of the guys in my classes and stuff in like, you know, senior year and stuff, and how easily they saw it, you know, like Calc BC, and like how easily they saw donuts like revolving in space in arc forms and stuff. And I was like, okay, tell me how to solve this equation. I mean, like I could learn it was just like being proficient in a language without being fluent in a language. You know, it was truly that different. And I thought it was such a good analogy to how it feels to get it, but not get it. the same time.
Yeah, I love science, but I don't understand how to do the math at all. Like I just math and me don't get along. So like when I read about things like this, it's just very interesting to me to like try to understand how they view the world and that kind of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. Plus, I just thought her whole character arc was really fascinating.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I wish towards the end, like as the one part of the story I felt like could have used some more fleshing out. Like in a way, I felt like the book could have been edited down a little bit because I felt like some parts were repetitive without needing to be. But then other parts, I wish I could have seen more of Molly's transition, like in her prison time.
Yes.
Like what actually led
like
her to
we
that
didn't
point
get to know her well enough.
Yeah.
We only
like
got to see her bad side, and I wish we could have seen her growth, because we just see like the bad stuff, and then suddenly she's like trying to help her mother and save everyone. I'm like, when did we miss something? Like there was like a whole window of time
that we're not seeing, like your internal dialogue there. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was really good. Like I was disappointed at like I would say the 25% mark, because I was like, how much going back and forth are we going to do without anything happening? You know?
Yeah.
Like, and I wanted to learn more
about around is confusing at first.
And I wanted to learn more about Anna's history, particularly with Yulia and stuff. And I hadn't. That comes a little bit later than I thought it would, and I think that I needed all of that backstory before I was invested in anyone. Like I needed to know what had led to this whole thing falling apart.
Yeah. I would have liked a little bit more too with Yulia and Anna, because I feel like they had a really deep connection, and like we didn't get to explore it as much as I thought we were going to. So that would have been nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Giving yourself maternal love. Yeah. That's my friend Cecil. Yeah, I think that that's definitely a theme in this book, right? This idea of like, you have to heal yourself. Like you have to get to that point of,
you
know, being the change that you wish to see in the world. Like you have to fix it. So.
I really liked the way it was like mothers and daughters, and not being upfront about things that are happening, and like trying to protect your child, and like protecting them so much that they seek out that information on their own, and it usually takes them the wrong path. I don't know. I think that was a really interesting way of exploring that. I really enjoyed like all of the mother-daughter relationships and how that all worked out.
I think mother-daughter relationships and time travel is such an interesting thing, because there's so many things you wish, I mean, I wish anyway, as a mom, that like I could have done that slightly differently. Like, which is, I mean, if I had a time machine, there are many things that I would do with the time machine, like just in my relationships with my children. Because like you're still a person, right, in and of yourself while you're still mothering, and that's always like a complicated place to be. If you could see like what has happened and then go back in time and correct things about yourself, you know, that would then lead to better relationships and things like that. I think that that's, you know, something that we would all wish for.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
But I also like the very, I think, realistic portrayal of addiction, of this idea that it's not so easy to just, you know, go back home and end everything and feel better. And I thought that scene, the scenes where Victor comes back and like just her addiction, not only to drugs, but to him and to the feeling of being alive and all of that was very well done.
Like, that it all just came right back. Yeah. I liked that aspect of Molly's story the best, I think, just exploring that. I also liked how where Raisa saw everything through math, Molly sees everything through art, and like the different ways that they view the world and that kind of thing. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did find some discussion questions, so we can go through some of those. Says at the beginning of Atomic Anna, Yulia and Lazar believe that we can be anything in America. Discuss the reasons why they buy into this and the way this belief changes for them over time. What do these characters want for themselves and for Molly? I always think that's interesting, like seeing the idea of America through the eyes of people coming to America and like having this idea in their head about like what it's going to be like and how it'll be different and that kind of thing. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, especially coming from the Soviet Union. What is that movie? American Tale? I grew up watching
with
that when I was
Feifel.
a kid with Fievel. Yeah.
I always felt very
connected. Think of that
because it was like sister was Tanya and he was Fievel, and it was very close to my name put together. But so I was like, oh look, it's an animated movie just about me. No, and I was like a little immigrant child. But I think it was interesting how you hear the Russian perspective of American propaganda, and then you have like all the Russian propaganda at the same time, and propaganda is a real thing on both sides. You know, like this whole
definitely
show up here and it's going to be great. Like all the doors are going to be held open. So
I thought that was interesting to see. Like, well, okay, it's a little better in some ways, but it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be. But it still gives you more opportunity. So, like, I don't know. There's good side and a bad side. And I mean, I do think it was probably better overall for Molly to go to America, but also maybe she wouldn't have gotten addicted. So I don't know. It's one of those things like, well, it could have gone bad either way.
Yeah. And yeah, it could have gone bad either way. And then there's other possibilities, right? Like they built this like mountain, you know, research station, and they lived there happily ever after and did their research, and it didn't become a catastrophe. I mean, there's so many different things that could have happened.
Right.
I did like how for a time travel book, I was not lost, and I didn't find any like real gaps where like it was confusing at the beginning as it was happening, because I was like, where are we when, you know? I really liked how they kept timing it to the death, like the deadline. That helped.
That was useful information.
Yeah, it really was. But I didn't find any gaps. Like I didn't find any like mistake that she had made in this thing where like I was like, that wouldn't make sense because of this. Which usually in a time travel book I can find at least one or two where I'm like, well, they could have easily solved this problem by doing this. And it's like I didn't see anything like that. So.
Yeah, I think it would be hard to write a time travel book just because I'm like visualizing this timeline you'd have to have and like all the different moving pieces, and it would be easy to slip up, I think.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Very much so. I think it would have been neat if her dad had come into the picture a little bit earlier too.
Yes.
It made sense, you know, where he comes in, but I think it would have been interesting if he had come in earlier just to make it more complicated.
Like I would have liked another perspective too, because it would have been interesting to get maybe like a Yulia perspective a couple of times, and like just I don't know. There's so many little tangents that I wish we could have had a little bit more of. So yeah,
I feel like Yulia in a way was very well fleshed out, so that we could care about her, but then she wasn't. It was like we had a full character description of who she was at different points. And even in her interactions, like in that scene in the mall when Anna comes back and stuff, and they have the play area with the train and everything, like her, like I got a really clear picture of who she was as a person. I didn't get to see her do things as much as I would have liked.
Yes, exactly. Like I don't know, I always that's how I know a book is really good, is if I'm really like I need more from the different characters because I feel like they're real people and I want to get to know them better.
Yeah.
So. Okay, Many characters in Atomic Anna try to protect their loved ones through silence or by telling them lies and half-truths. Challenges then arise when their falsehoods are discovered. What do you think the novel is saying about the ways that families communicate? Like, I really appreciated that aspect of the story because I think that's really realistic. We do tend to try to hold back. We don't necessarily want to tell our children bad things about the world, bad things about their family and that kind of stuff. So you want to like protect them and keep them in that safe bubble, but that doesn't always end up working the way you expect it to. And they either end up just being ignorant about things or they end up seeking out that information elsewhere and maybe going down darker paths than you would want them to.
I thought it was interesting that they told her at all that she was not their biological child.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Yulia and Lazar, right? Lazar told her because she was an infant. They could have easily kept it to themselves. And I think that I wondered as I was reading that first portion, especially like, did they think that Anna would come? Did they think
I thought that's why they told her. I assumed they had hoped that she would come back. But yeah, I don't know. It was interesting too to see like their interpretation of Anna's relationship with Yasha because we only get to see like through what they thought about it and a little bit of what Anna explains about it. But then like his interpretation of their relationship was so different. And I was like, wait.
Yeah.
So which one was right? And like
Anna herself didn't explore what it was, like while it was happening, it was just sort of like, this is what's happening now. And this is what's happening now. And I'm still doing the research and I still get to do what I want to do. And he's physically grounding me like in my, body and keeping me from going insane. I thought it was interesting too that Yulia never addresses this like attraction that Anna has for her. Like there's no point in the book where she's like reflective about the type of love that Anna has for her, And I find it unlikely that she wouldn't have known. Like she says, right? Like Anna says at one point, like that she thinks Yulia knows, or feels it, but like we never get to hear what that is from Yulia's perspective,
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wish that had been better explored because I didn't think that the author really went anywhere with that. Like it was hinted at that was happening, but not anything about the ramifications of it, like what Yulia thought about it. So I would have liked more of that.
Or even like what would happen, like once they found, like Yulia must have had a lot of feelings about Anna finding out about her and Lazar and like just knowing what that would do to someone as fragile as Anna. Like if anyone knew, it would be Yulia who knew like how that would impact her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really realistic too, Arrrgh's comment.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought the only like comfortable pat kind of part about the story was the ending. I mean, the rest of the story was quite hard, like to go through everybody's emotions about the little things. I thought you did a really good job of describing just how hard it is to sit with like your past and your choices and, how you've affected other people. Like I thought the characters did a good job of thinking about how their actions and their choices affected the people in their lives, not just,
Yeah, I agree. I thought the story was very well thought out as far as like exploring everybody's trauma and I enjoy sad books. I don't know. I like reading stories that make me feel emotional. Yeah,
agreed.
I do think the ending was almost abrupt. I would have liked a little bit more from the end of the book, which is weird because like it's a long book. Like that's how many pages was this? Like almost 500. It's like 430 pages. So like I felt like there should have been more at the end to do with like the wrapping up of everything instead of just like almost like snapping her fingers and poof, now everything's better.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice. I did end up tabbing my book while I was reading.
Even the mom though, I mean, so I won't get into the ending too much because other people haven't finished. But there are some, I felt like she wrapped it up in a way that I think the ending makes total sense.
Oh yeah, like, definitely. I liked it. I just wanted a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I like the ending. I just wish, actually, I would prefer this book didn't have a happy ending. I liked that it had a happy ending because I thought that they went through so much.
And I feel like I think they earned that happy ending. Like I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
Although I expected like something terrible to happen before we got to that happening. Like I don't know. I thought there was going to be a lot more death.
Yeah, exactly. I thought there might be, you know, like main character death.
Yeah, that's what I expected to happen. Yeah. Like the whole book, I thought Anna would die because they just kept like leading up to like she's falling apart more and more.
Right.
So yeah.
Or someone else that we cared about, like Julia, or someone like you know, where like we would experience that feeling of like, well, you can't have everything. But I suppose we did have one death, but it just wasn't like a character where like we would, you know, we would mourn so much.
Okay, discuss the role of intention and morality in this novel. For instance, does it matter that Anna harnesses nuclear power intending to use it for good rather than as a weapon? And do your original intentions matter? I thought that was a really interesting exploration in this book. Like the idea of, but I want to do this for good. We're reading Lord of the Rings right now. So like the idea of, can you use this ring for good? And of course you can't. So like the idea of, if I'm using this for a good purpose, but somebody else takes it, am I at fault because I created this thing? Like, I don't know. I think that's always an interesting exploration.
Yeah. I mean, I still haven't seen Oppenheimer and stuff, so
I haven't seen that either. I need to watch
that
it.
idea.
It's a long movie though.
Yeah.
And I'm always so tired in the evening. I'm like, I don't know if I can get through it.
Yeah. I mean, same. But I also think, I don't know, this idea of like science in particular, when you get to a certain point of discovery, it's almost like anything can be used as a weapon, you know, like if you are going to reveal secrets about like the space-time continuum, like, and any kind of like ability to manipulate it, then
time travel in itself. Like the dangers of like, well, what if you change something that makes everything worse?
Right.
Yeah.
If you build a bomb, it will be used. Yeah. But sometimes you're not even building a bomb, right? You're building like the technology that allows for one, you know, like you're building something that is just that final piece that could be used for other things. But what does one do?
Okay, and then the characters of this novel grapple with the questions of time travel and whether just because you can change the past, does it mean you should? If you had this power, what would you do? Should anyone have the power to change the past? We kind of already talked a little bit about that. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the idea of actual time travel. Like the idea of being able to go and see things would be kind of cool, but I would be so scared of like the butterfly effect. Like what
exactly?
if
I was going to say the butterfly effect. Yeah. What if you do something?
Like, I don't know. Like what would that change? Like even the smallest thing can have such a major ramifications. So I don't know.
I randomly saw like a clip on like Instagram of that movie Meet Joe Black, where at the beginning of the movie it's the actual character, and they've met in the diner or whatever, and they like each other so much. And I don't know if anybody remembers the movie, but when they leave the movie, they have this like goodbye scene where she's like, okay, goodbye, you know, whatever, and he's like goodbye, and they walk off, and it's that classic movie scene where each one turns back while the other one's walking away, you know. So they look at the other one's walking away, they look at the other one's walking away, and then finally he turns back one last time, but he's in the middle of the street, and then he gets hit by a truck. You know, and that's the whole like beginning of that movie. But I like that, it's like that kind of thing, right? It's that little thing, like it might be an insignificant thing, like what if you knock a pebble into the road and then someone bends down to pick it up and it's the wrong time and they don't meet the person they were supposed to meet, and then you know, like like all of this stuff, like this, the inconsequential things that you might not know are happening. So, and it's the idea of, is any one life more important than another? Like if you go back in time, you're definitely changing like the timeline, no matter what. Like even if no one sees you, you've changed the timeline somehow.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I love the concept of time travel and like reading about it and like seeing how it would play out. But would I ever do it? No. I don't think I would.
Yeah.
I think I'd be too scared. I don't want to ruin anything.
But then would you travel forward?
I don't know. Ooh, I hadn't thought of that. Like, what would that look like? I don't know.
You don't know exactly. That's the problem.
I think I'd be scared of that too. Like, what if it's so terrible? I don't want to know about it. I don't know.
I agree that this book did it really well. Yeah. I thought the book kept a really interesting. Sometimes when you have time travel books, they take this like voice that sounds consistent throughout the times, like the actual speech of the characters and the tone seems like one period, you know, like it's like the modern time goes into like medieval times and stuff like that. This one I thought did a really good job. Granted, its time period was shorter where it was switching, but I felt very much like each time period maintained its character, you know, like when they were in the 80s and when they were in the
I agree. I think it all sounded pretty accurate to their time.
Yeah. I think the danger show. So I see people saying that she would go forward so her future self could show her that it's going to be okay, but that's a risk too, right? Like, what if it's not going to be okay?
I know. Like, what if it's not?
Yeah. And now all your rules about not going back in the past to change things might change. So hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because then if you move forward and everything's not okay and you're just going to stay there, so that's another question. Is it a one-way ticket or is it a round trip ticket? Is it like you get to just shuttle forward and stay there, or is it, you know, you have your little time turner with you?
I think some of my favorite time travel books are the ones where the time travel is just happening to them and they have no control over it. I've read, I think, 2 different books like this where they're just like sucked back in time and they don't know how long they're going to be there. They have no control over how they get back. And so they just have to like exist in that time and space. So I think that's interesting. I think that's more compelling than a time travel machine, because that like we have no way of knowing if you'll ever be able to get back to your real time.
Yeah. That is one thing that I thought was lacking from here in terms of time travel, was there doesn't seem to be this anxiety over like it not going well this time or her not being able to get back. You know, like I thought it would have been interesting to have at least one time where like it didn't work, or like the 2 hours elapsed and she was still stuck in that time, or something was wrong with the amplifier or something.
Yeah.
You know, so that would have been interesting.
It just worked really the same every single time, which was interesting, I guess. And I didn't mind that, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen something going wrong.
I mean, things go wrong with like our microwaves. Like I feel like something's gonna go wrong with like a time machine.
That's true. Yeah.
But then again, I've dropped my iPhone 10,000 times, and every time I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, look at how this camera still works. So maybe they're built like cell phones.
I agree with that. Yeah. So I too could learn how.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I really appreciate reading books like this where they're explaining concepts in a way that even I can understand, because I feel like when I read Andy Weir's writing, for example, like he does so much like hard science and math in his books, and I usually just skim through that because I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, sure, cool, but like I appreciate when a writer can explain it to me in ways that I can follow along and understand what's happening. So, yeah.
That's how I felt the first time I saw like a diagram of like space-time on like a parachute or trampoline surface, you know, with like a weighted ball in the center. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. Than I still don't understand. But I mean, like, I think I could understand. Like I'm in the realm of understanding, which is better than not. So, because when people talk about waves and even the glass idea of that, you know, like when you like shear through a wave and stuff, I thought that was like very easy to like visualize.
Yeah, I really liked how she explained that, because that made sense to me, and I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm getting it. I think I can understand where she's going with that.
So that was part of the parts though where I was like talking to my husband about it. He was like, yeah, that's not like that. And I was like, you don't know that that's not like that. But apparently, I mean, probably we have like quantum physics books randomly around the house. I'm like, this is so obnoxious. Like, nobody reads this for fun. Meanwhile, I'm reading these books. No.
Okay, so do we have anything else we want to add or talk about? I think I've gone through all the good questions. There's a couple more, but we've already.
I think it was fun to be in Russia still, like to go from a Russia book to a Russia book. I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I liked like seeing the different time periods in Russia. Yeah,
I've always been interested in Russian, like sort of like the you know how like every country and nationality has this like ethos, you know, of growing up, like no matter what political party you fall in or whatever, sort of this underlying like when we talk about the Protestant work ethic and things like that, that kind of underlying thing that grounds them. I thought it's always been interesting to me, because when I was in residency, I had a lot of Russian residents in the program ahead of me, and they were so matter of fact about how life was hard. And that always stuck with me. Like they were so like incredulous about everybody else's complaining about ours and things like that. Like, you know, they were like, Americans. Like, Americans. So, but they were always willing. They were so fun in their partying and things like that. So it was such an interesting dichotomy of things. Like they were so like passionate and like into having a good time, but also like no complaining about anything. Like never.
I find that fascinating. I my family history is Russian on my mother's side. They're from Russia and Hungary, so they definitely complain. But I think that's a Jewish thing.
We definitely had Jewish Russians in the program too, but I think they were less complaining than the rest of us, probably. So that's
you don't grow up on the shtetl and not complain, I guess.
Yeah. Complaining is an art, though. You got to do it well.
Yeah.
Or not at all. So, what is up for March? for us?
In March, we are reading The Postcard by Anne Barrest. This one is set in France, I think. Yeah, the Barrest family home is in Paris. And I want to say this is something to do with a postcard being delivered that reveals some information about her family's past during the Holocaust and World War II. And she's going to go down a rabbit hole, like exploring that, which is one of my favorite things to read, is like somebody finding this little piece of information about their family history and then like digging deeper to see like where that leads and what it means and all of that. So I've heard really good things about this. And
it's like one of my
on my shelf for ages.
It's been on my TBR. One of my favorite things about looking at old, those like giant used bookstores like in New York City and stuff, and the ones that, even the little ones that put out the carts on the sidewalk where you'll flip through these really old donated books and things like that, and old found books where you'll find letters being used as bookmarks. And it's the best, like, to see these like old handwritten, beautiful scripted letters where everyone really had to do penmanship in school, and there's just, and dedications and things like that about why someone gave you this book. It's never just like to Chris from Grandma. It's always like this big long explanation of why they thought this book would be the right book. So I love that.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna put this in the Discord later today so that if anyone starts reading this early, you can jump in and chat about it. But I don't know, that one's a little bit denser. I think I might start that a little earlier in the month just to give myself a little more buffer. I don't know how long it'll take me to read. But
well, I mean, I know you and I are both people who like have a bunch going, and it's a book like that where I need to have it buffered with something else so that I can, because I like to chase the heavy things with light things too. And just
and this month is also middle grade March, so I'm going to be reading a ton of children's books this month, so I feel like that'll be a good balance.
For sure.
Okay, I just looked at the calendar just to see, and I think that we'll probably have our live show for the postcard on April the 6th, because that's the first Saturday. So if anybody wants to mark their calendars. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and we can wrap this up. So thank you all for coming and chatting about Atomic Anna with us. It was a good book. I'm glad we read it together. I think it led to a really good discussion. So thanks for hanging out and chatting, and we will see you next time in April to discuss the postcard.
Super fun as usual. I look forward to it. If anybody's interested, by the way, I tried to match my lipstick to the cover, and it is Naplene's Lip Vinyl Wicked. So it's like one of the reddish.
Very pretty color.
It stays on all day. It's amazing.
Okay, so thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time. Happy reading.
Bye.
Bye.